So that rule's kind of changed. The question was about inactive voters and how long you can remain inactive. And there has been some directive that's going to change that a little bit more. So if you're an inactive voter and you decide that you get a hold of us and you think that you shouldn't be, and we can help you figure out how to reactivate that if you're eligible. So that's one thing to talk about. We do clean the voter rolls daily, and I know that there's been a lot of contention around whether we do that or not. We do. We get obituaries and death records. We get records from Coos Health and Wellness and from the state, and we get them from other states through a program called ERIC. We get them through other counties. So daily we are cleaning the voter rolls. And as far as inactive voters go, there used to be some rule around if you were out, if you didn't vote in an election for so many elections, then you were like inactivated, and that's not the case anymore. You can still vote. Normally, you're inactivated for things like we couldn't verify your address, or your signatures didn't match and you never returned your slip to tell us, like, this is my new signature. Things like that. And if you go online, there is a very extensive list about what causes you to be inactivated and how to rectify that. But the big answer there is if you have been inactivated, give us a call. We'll help figure out why and what needs to be done. As far as this last question that I skipped over, vote by mail. So as many of you know, Oregon has been a vote by mail state for over 20 years. We were the first state to kind of make this popular, and the reason that happened was because the voters themselves wanted it to happen, and the reason that they knew that was because over 50% of the population was already voting through absentee ballots. And so at that point, they looked at it and said, wow, this is a population of people that would really probably prefer to have vote by mail as an option. And they tried it out in a couple of I want to either say Marion County or Multnomah County, I can't remember off the top of my head. But they tried it out in one of the bigger counties first, and it went well, and then they put it to the people to vote, and people said, yes, this is what we want. And so that's how we became a vote by mail state. The reason that vote by mail is so popular is because it makes it accessible, okay? You don't have to take the day off work, which a lot of people have a hard time doing. You don't, if you have mobility issues, you can still vote. If you, there's lots of things that can happen why it's difficult to get to a polling place and stand in line all day long, okay? So it was one of those decisions that the people wanted because it allowed for accessibility. And so until recently, we hadn't had a whole lot of contention around that. And in recent years, I think there's been a lot of misinformation around vote by mail, and so there's been question about whether it's secure. And it is a secure process. As you heard me say, we have lots and lots and lots of checks and balances. And I think that coming and watching that process really does help solidify that for people to see, like, wow, this is very secure. So I do encourage you to come and watch that process, but I will say that if we were to switch to a system where we were to go back to hand counting, it would cost a lot of money, for one, because we would need a lot of manpower. We would need to set things up differently, so we would have to be going back to polling and renting up the facilities and things of that nature. So one of the reasons that it's not a great idea for our county is because it would cost us a lot of money. And I don't have those numbers with me here, but we have looked into those numbers as an association, and it would be expensive. In Shasta County, California, they have gone through some transitions with that, and they looked into numbers for them, and then after that we looked into numbers for the state of Oregon, and it is quite expensive to switch to that. Not only that, but humans make error, right? So if you sit down and we hand count everything, it's going to take a lot longer. We're not going to have results as quickly, and there's going to be more error. Computers, they just do the job, and they don't get tired as the night goes on. So that's the biggest one. We know that when we do our audits or when we do our hand counts, like if we have a close election, we have to do a hand count too. They just take a really, really long time. And that's just for one small piece of it. And so we know that in order to accomplish that, it would take a lot more resources. So as far as security, vote by mail system is a very secure process, and I do encourage people to watch it. I think once they see it, then it really opens their eyes to that. Do we have some other questions?
Yeah, this one. With the new U.S. ruling of not postmarking till processed, which could be Portland for us, instead of as handed in locally, will workers be able to hand cancel a ballot?
So yeah, I already kind of answered that one, but just so that you guys are aware, postmarking has been happening this way anyway. This isn't really new. It's just kind of a new message that they came out with so people are aware. Like when you drop yours off locally, the mail goes to Portland and then comes back, and that is where it's canceled. So that's why we're asking people, and we've always asked people to just go in and get it hand canceled if you're close. Yes, I did. We just met with USPS last week during conference, and they said yes, you can go in and get it hand canceled still. Now, they're still only going to be open till 5 or 5:30 depending on your post office, so don't wait until 7 p.m. on election night and hope to do that. If you do, get it to a ballot box or come down to the courthouse and hand it to us personally. So, yeah.
So how do you make sure tabulation machines are counting accurately?
Yeah, that's great. So we have a test that we call it LNA, and you can observe that process as well. So for each election, we have to create what's called a test deck, and what a test deck is ballots that have a special mark across them, so we know that they're the test deck, and each one has been marked with every possible option. And so sometimes they're very large because of all the different precincts, all the different ballot styles, because the different precincts and different splits and all of those things, right? So we have to use one of every ballot style of every option, okay? So we create these test decks, and the purpose of those is to run them through the tabulation machines beforehand, before the election begins. And you can observe this, you can sign up to observe it. We put the times when we're going to do it on our website. And then we run them through the election, or we run them through the tabulation machine, and then we make sure that it says what we know they've been marked as already, because we have the key for the test deck, right? And so we do that ahead of the election, and then we do it after the election, twice before the election, and then once after the election. So that we're constantly making sure that they are working properly, yeah. What else you got?
Can the federal government take possession of Oregon ballots?
Short answer, no. So we've been in litigation about that with our Secretary of State's office, and our Attorney General have been in litigation with the federal government about that. But according to the Constitution, states are in charge of their own elections. So So far, that has been upheld, and I won't speak to hypotheticals.
So how are we protecting the voters from ice posted at the polls or drop boxes?
So there are laws that people aren't allowed to intimidate others at ballot boxes. So someone asked me recently, are we allowed to watch the ballot boxes from a distance to make sure no one's intimidating them? Yes. You're not allowed to approach them with your position or how they should vote when they're dropping off their ballot box, though. So as far as protecting the voters, I can't speak to ICE and how to protect against that. I can just tell you that the rules that we're required to follow for elections. And the rule is that you're not allowed to intimidate someone when they're dropping off a ballot. As far as upholding that, that becomes a legal issue, and so that would be police and lawyers. I will say that during every major election, I reach out to all of the different police departments within each city, town, and the sheriff's office, and I let them know, hey, we're having a major election. If you could do extra rounds around ballot boxes, that would be much appreciated. And our sheriff's office does come and check on us and make sure that we're not seeing any problems. So if I was to see someone intimidating someone at the ballot box or get report of that, I would reach out to local law enforcement and the Secretary of State's office as well. So that's the part we can play. Yeah.
Would you talk about ballot election audits?
Yeah, so I talked about those a little bit. We do an audit during major state or any state or federal election. We're required to do an audit. That information comes to us from the Secretary of State's office. They choose which batches we will audit after the fact, so we don't know ahead of time, and then we have to compare that to the numbers we had.
So can you speak to President Trump's request for national elections? Is it possible? Because county clerk is being voted on. How will that affect your job?
So there's a couple parts there, so I'm just going to read it to make sure I understand. I like to remind people that I am a non-partisan position. It's my job to uphold the law. I know I'm a voted position, so people are always like, you're a politician. And I understand that, yes, because I'm voted on, but I don't see myself as a politician. I see myself as someone who has been elected by the people to uphold the process and follow the law. So, where I stand is we have state law that requires us to conduct elections. We have local law that requires us to conduct elections in a specific way, and so that is what I will continue to do, because that is what I was hired to do or elected to do. So, speaking to, I know you guys are going to get to talk with, or the League of Women Voters is going to have another presentation, I believe in a couple months, with our Secretary of State in Bandon. And I would say this is a good question for him, and probably not a great question for me, because I stay out of the litigation pieces at that level. But at this point, we pay attention to all of the legislation. We meet with the Secretary of State's office every 2 weeks via Zoom for 2 hours. We go to conference where we meet with them. I was just at conference all last week and met with the Secretary of State and his team. I meet with the Oregon Association of County Clerks every other week, and again at the conference twice a year. And so we are paying attention to legislation. It's constantly changing, even little things that don't make it into the papers that are constantly changing. So we will continue to pay attention and follow the law.
Do you take any extra steps to verify citizenship of people who vote?
So as it is now, when someone registers to vote, they attest that their information is correct. They don't have to show me their ID. We're not allowed to ask for their ID. They have to verify who they are by giving their driver's license or the last four of their social security number, and then they sign something attesting to who they are. We are an attestation state, and it does say like there's a fine. If we were to receive information that they weren't a citizen, then that information is gathered and we send it to the Secretary of State's office, and they have a research division that does go through that. And I hear this all the time, like people, the big one I hear is that dead people are voting. And I hear this a lot, and I hear someone comes in and they say, my friend so-and-so knows somebody, and I always respond by saying, bring me whatever information you have on that. If you have proof of any kind, bring it, and we will review it, we will send it to their investigation team, and no one ever provides that information. Because the number of voter fraud in Oregon is like 0.0006 or something percent. It's so small.
You left out 1 0.
Yeah, it's like there's a lot of zeros.
It's 4 zeros on the other
Yeah,
side.
it's a lot. It's just like the smallest number, right? So
1 in a million.
yeah. So, but there are teams at the Secretary of State's office that's their investigative team. So, you know, if you have, we want to know about it. We want to clean it up. So if you're telling me that happened to someone, please bring it to me, and I will personally make sure that it gets looked at. So, yes. Other questions?
I think that was it.
Is that all?
We already addressed
Okay.
what you should do if you get someone else's ballot.
Okay, and we've got a little bit more time. Are there other questions just out there that came up while you guys were listening? I know this is a lot to take in, and it does help, I think, to, like I say, come and observe the process. We do have, if you go onto the Coos County webpage, I know it's not always the most user-friendly. It has to work for all departments. So when you get in there, click on elections and look for the current election in the sidebar. That is where you kind of want to start. And that will give you all kinds of information about that current election. That's also where you're going to go to look for election night results. But if there's something you can't find in there, like I say, I mean, give us a call. One of the questions people always ask me is how many active voters we have. Yesterday I took this number, and so it may be different today because we are, like I say, constantly cleaning up the voter rolls, and also people are registering. So 50,503 active voters as of yesterday. I'm not sure what our population is up to. It's like 64,000, I think, at this point, somewhere in there. Did you have a question? I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
You were just at conference, I wondered if they discussed the SAVE Act or not.
They did not. I did spend a little bit of time reading about that again today. I know it has passed.
What was that?
It's passed the House, the SAVE Act.
Oh, the SAVE
And it needs to go to the Senate, and it's been discussed in the past. We did not discuss it at this particular conference. But if it were to pass, we would definitely meet as a team to discuss what those changes look like for each county. But it's not something that I have a directive on at this time. So, yeah. Let me think about some of the other things that are big ones that you guys might want to hear about before we... Oh, the DMV does do, Oregon Motor Voter, right? So when you go to the DMV, you get registered to vote. 16-year-olds, when they go to the DMV, they get put in the registration system, but they can't vote until they're 18. And their information is not public record until they become 18 because they're minors. So that's something I'd like to remind people of. But if you have a kiddo who just turned 16, they went to get their driver's license, they will get paperwork right away, and that's how they decide like what party they want to be with and all of those things, and they'll send that back to us, and then they'll be in the system for when they do turn 18. It's all ready to go. They don't have to worry about it like right before the election. So make sure they're signing those. What else? Oh, voters pamphlets. People always ask me about voters pamphlets. The question I get is, how come Coos County doesn't create a voters pamphlet anymore? Well, Coos County never created a voters pamphlet, and the reason being is that they take a lot of manpower and they cost a lot. You guys get a voters pamphlet during the state and federal elections because the state pays for those. But during the smaller elections or special districts, we don't have a voters pamphlet, and we never have created one in Coos County. A lot of smaller counties do not create them. We do put people's filing forms up online, and that has their contact information and a little bit of information about them. But so if you're like, who is this person, you can go and look at the filing form and then figure out how to contact them or look at their website or whatever. So that is kind of a nice way to do your own research. And during the primary in general, we get to include things from our county on the state-produced pamphlet. So that's one that I get questions about.
Do you delineate which races or not? Because it doesn't cover all counties, all the county races. What the state will allow in the pamphlet and what kinds of races are not in there?
So the state, like the real, I think maybe the city ones aren't in there. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look. But I think the city ones are not, but the county ones are, is what it is. And county positions are. But I do like to remind people too that the state produces the voters pamphlet, but they don't decide whether candidates are in the voters pamphlet. I know that was a big question a couple of years ago. I know that Trump decided not to be in the Oregon voters pamphlet, and they reached out to him a couple times, or his team, to find out if he wanted to be, and they declined. So whenever someone is a candidate running for an election, the person has to pay to be put in the voters pamphlet, and they create their own statement for the voters pamphlet that isn't regulated by the Secretary of State's office. So I like to remind people of that one too. That is a good question on voters pamphlets there. Yeah, I think that's a big piece of what I had to share with you guys. I'm sure there's something I'm missing. Like I say, I have a chest cold, so I'm a little bit off my game tonight. But any other pressing questions about I like to remind people there is some confusion about who gets sent to the November election for county positions and how that all works. So if you, like for my position, it gets a little interesting. So if 3 people run for county clerk in the primary, you have to run in the primary to be on the ticket. If 3 people run and one of them gets more than the 50%, then they move on to the general and the other 2 do not. And so they move on, and there is a write-in position as well. If only 2 people and neither one of them gets more than the 51%, then they both move on to the general. So it's a little bit, that can get a little bit confusing, but that is in the frequently answered questions on the page as well. So some of those questions, like, we don't get very often, but we have done an extensive look through the frequently asked questions. And so if there's one that you go through, if you are super into elections like we are, and you go through our complete frequently asked page, and there's something on there that is missing, let us know, because we would be happy to add some information for that piece as well. I'd also like to remind people that sometimes if you hear someone repeating misinformation, engaging with them and telling them that they're wrong isn't necessarily the right way to go about that, but asking them to come and observe the process is, I think, the most helpful. Not everybody's going to do that, but I think those who really who really believe in it and who have their strong conviction about their information will come, because they do want to know the truth. So I do, if you run across somebody and you feel like they are giving out misinformation, sometimes it's just best to say, the elections office loves to hear from you. They love to have observers. Call them, go check them out. Because seeing how secure the process is, I think, is really what is going to be the most beneficial. Like, we can continue to say things all we want, but if you can actually see it happen, I think that's the most powerful. Somebody asked me, I'm not sure if they're here, but somebody had asked me about, and it might have been you even, through email, about going and visiting high schools and colleges. I did reach out to the high school to try and maybe go and talk to the civics class, because I think that would be beneficial. A lot of those kiddos will eventually be voters, and so we can kind of talk about that process. So I'm hoping that I can get a start there. And then if that goes well, then I would be willing to go and do that with the other high schools in the area. SWAC, I think, is a little bit more difficult because it's hard to figure out the right venue for that, But I have reached out to SWAC's library and asked if we could send them voter pamphlets, and so we're going to send them voter pamphlets. Also, we're going to send them we have always sent them to libraries, but we're also going to send them to care facilities. So if there's a care facility in the county that you know of that you think might not have made it on the list, we did do a pretty extensive internet search and try and get as many of the care facilities in the area, because you only get one voter pamphlet per address typically, so that's not great if you're in a care facility with a lot of people. But SWAC, we're going to send them some voter pamphlets. The librarian was very helpful. We also are going to make sure that they have more voter registration cards there. She said she would be happy to house them in the library as well. And I just let her know as a resource that if students have questions about how to vote, that she could point them in our direction, and so that she was happy about that. And then I try to go and talk to any group that asks me to. I've been to the Rotary, I've been to Leadership Coos, I've been to the Chamber of Commerce. But any group that reaches out and asks, I'm more than happy to go and give information. So if I have to work on timing, what time works the best, but we make it work. And so if you know of a group that would like to hear the information, I'm happy to reach out to them as well. Typically, I don't reach out to one party or the other, but if they reach out to me and ask, I'm happy to go and speak with them. Yeah, just because I don't want it to feel like I am not being that. I want to keep it very nonpartisan. So. I think that's about what I have for you guys. I'm going through my frequently asked questions here to see if there was something I missed, but I'm not seeing anything at this time. just make sure you sign those ballots. Oh, I know a question that I get all the time. Do I have to vote the whole ballot? No, you can vote for one thing on the ballot. If you don't want to vote for anything on the ballot, but you just want to mail it back to us, that's fine too. But you don't have to vote if you don't know anything about that particular candidate or that particular position. It's okay. You don't have to. You're not required to. Your vote will still count on the other things that you voted on. I get that question a lot. And another one that I like to remind people of now that I'm up here thinking, write-ins. If we could please use write-ins for their intended purpose. We do get a lot of silly write-ins, and as much as I love, reading Mickey Mouse 5,000 times, by the end of the election, it does get a little old, and Mickey Mouse is not running. But the big thing about that is it does take a lot of time during the adjudication process, and as you all know, time equals dollars when you have to pay staff to do the adjudication. So we have to go through and look at all those write-ins. We have to go through and anytime you write none of these, we have to go and unmark that as an option because none of these is not an actual candidate, right? So it's not a human. So we have to unmark that every time. So none of these isn't benefiting anyone. It's actually taking a lot of time. So just
What do you do with the write-ins when somebody's name is in there?
Well, yeah, so if somebody's name is in there, that's what we want, that's what they're for, right? So if there's a write-in that's legitimate and you put a person's name and you fill in the bubble, that's great. And we do go back and count all of those during the adjudication process so this is interesting too. Like say you have filed candidates and one of them has already received an amount that is enough to push them over the winning limit based on how many ballots are still left to count, then we won't go through and count all of the write-ins, right? But say you have a write-in option that's close, we will. Or if you have no candidate filed and it's just write-ins, then we're going to count the write-in options there as well. So yes. Yes.
Just a pro tip, don't be eco-friendly and put all your household ballots in one envelope. Send them in. We do get more than one sometimes in envelopes. You want to talk
Envelopes have to stay with the ballot, so that's an important one too. Your envelope is connected to your ballot, and so we have people say, like I've had someone come to the window and just try and hand me their ballot without their envelope, and I say, yeah, we can't take that. But we can, what we can do, and they say, well, my dog ate my ballot envelope. Okay, that happens. What we can do is we can create a new ballot for you. You can shred that one. You're gonna have to vote this new ballot. You can go to one of the little booths and vote it, sign it, and bring it back. And so that it would be the reissued ballot situation that we talked about earlier. You guys, we get some of the craziest stories about what happened to people's ballots, and we will work with you. One of the biggest ones we have is, like you live in the same household. I accidentally signed my husband's ballot and he signed mine. We can help you with that too. Just call us and we will talk you through what to do. We have a process for everything. So make sure to call us. We will help you. Our goal is really just to make sure that every eligible voter gets a chance to vote. We don't care who you're voting for, or how you vote. We just want every eligible, and we want as many of those eligible voters from our county to be voting, because the more people within the county who are expressing their voice, that means that's how many the county is being represented as a whole, right? So during a general election, we'll get into the 70s, 7%. think last time we had 72% during a general election of voter turnout. My goal is 80%. You know, I really want to get those numbers up. Now, during the primary, the numbers are going to be a lot lower. They just are. During a special district, they're even lower, and that kills me because that is your local government that's happening. That's the school boards and the hospital boards and all of those things that are happening here that affect all of us, like on a day-to-day. So I understand that people get fired up during those general elections, but if we could get those numbers up during all elections, that would be ideal. So, yeah.
What triggers recounts?
What triggers a recount? So, typically, if it's close. So if you've got, it depends on, there's a calculation to determine how close it has to be, dependent on how many people are in that precinct. But if the results are close, and like I say, there's a calculation that has to happen, then we're required to do a recount. And so we will do it by hand at that point.
Can candidates request a recount?
Candidates can request a recount, but there's some cost that's occurred through that, depending on the reason for the candidate. So if it's not close and the candidate requests it, then they may have to take on the cost of that. The other thing with cost of elections, I think that's an important thing to talk about just real quickly, is we pay for our own elections. So, you know, the state isn't paying for our elections. They pay for some of the postage stuff. But so in the budget, it comes out of the county's general fund. We, as citizens, pay for our elections. So during a general or a primary, if a city wants to put a measure on, they don't have to pay for that. But if they want to put one on during a special election or during an election that they call just for that, they do have to pay for them. And elections, they can be expensive. So that's something to think about as well. We do lobby the state and federal government to help with that funding, but as it is now, counties pay for elections. So we are on a tight budget, and we try and do our best to keep that number small for the people, you know. Yeah.
Do you use volunteers for anything?
So they're not, they are paid. They're paid at the minimum wage during elections. When we hire people to do boards and signature verifying. So, and it's a small staff that we will hire on, along with couriers, the people that go and pick up the ballots from the boxes. As is now, yeah, the counties do pay them, but it's a very small amount. And we try to only bring them in on the days when we're going to be able to really utilize them and get the job done, and then send them home if we don't have work. So, yeah. Yes.
What causes in a certain race for some names to be printed larger than others?
They shouldn't be.
There's been ballot measures where some candidates in the slot are a certain print and others are tiny. What causes that?
That shouldn't be the case. If you see that, then I would love to see that, like where you're seeing that. Because we spend a lot of time proofing, like a lot of time. And now, I mean, every now and then, you know, you still might get like one little spelling error or something in there, but I mean, we proof and proof and proof and proof. So one of the things that we check for is font size and font style and all of those things. So that shouldn't be the case. But I can't say that it's never happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who also, or how is the order of candidates decided?
Yeah, that's a great question. So every election, we're given a list of order based on alphabet. So we get an alphabet list is what happens. And so it comes from the Secretary of State's office, and we don't know until right before we start designing the ballots. And it's done randomly each time. So it's a random alpha list is what we call it. And it comes from the Secretary of State's office. That way we can't, like, there's no playing favorites when designing. Yeah. Yeah. Good question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. Anybody else? Question. As we keep talking, like more questions keep popping up. I know. There's a lot to it. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you all for inviting